So in the previous tutorial, I explained you guys the importance of setting up your project file for or your project folder for Maya, and showed you the different folders that Maya has for organizing its files. And now I want to talk a little bit about the Maya workflow. Basically in Maya you have two different things. You have assets and you have scenes. Your assets are your characters and your objects. And your scenes are your animation scenes and your rendering scenes. Now when you are developing your character, you usually start with the model. For each individual character you have a specific folder, and for each individual step of the development of the character you also have a folder. So you have a folder for, let's say, Ben, and we have a subfolder for the model, and we have a subfolder for the rig, and so on. So when we are done with the modeling part of the character, we will copy the model, the final model, and we put it in the rigging file or in the rigging folder. And now we can start the rigging of the character. And keeping these separate is really important, because this way we know that whatever we do with the rig, we know that we're doing it to the final model of the character. Now the next step is, as soon as we have the rigging done, we call it the final rig, and then the next step is really important. Whenever we want to animate our character, we reference the final rig into the animation scene. Now the reason why this is important is that whenever I want to change something to the rig, I don't change it in the animation scene, but I change it in the rig. And the reason for that is that whenever for example, I'm not happy with how the hands move or how I can control the eyes, and if I change it in the animation scene, then that change on the rig will only apply in that particular animation scene that I just made. But I want that change to appear in all the other animation scenes that I do with the same character. So always change anything that you are going to change to the rig. Change it in the original final rig scene that you have referenced into the animation scene. So it goes both ways. Now this also applies for the modeling, but we don't want to reference our model into the rig scene. If you reference a reference, Maya gets all shaky and it will collapse. So never reference in reference. So whenever you make a change to the model, you will update your model, call it the final model file, and then you will have to replace it in your rig file in order for it to be updated into the animation file. Now after you are finished with your animation, you will you can render your scene. So how does that work in practice? I'm just going to show you a little bit of a project that I work on a lot. Since we are still in the Ben project, I'm now going to switch my project to another Maya project so that my files will all connect well. So I'll go to Set Project, and I go to Lars and Rosa, and I go to Stories, and then in my story file you can see I have the After Effects file folder, the Maya folder, and the Photoshop folder. Now I click on Maya, and here are all the Maya folders, and I say Set. Now I go to File, I go to Open, and then you see that for everything that I've made with Lars and Rosa, I have a folder that separates or that contains all the versions of that specific project that I did. And I also have a template file, which is really easy so that I don't have to always start from scratch when I want to make a new animation or still. So let's open the template file. Don't save. There's Lars, and as you can see, Lars is already in the scene. We have the background and we have a light, and everything in this scene is already set up so that whenever I hit render, it looks nice and it looks exactly the same as Lars always looks. But the most important thing to notice here is that if I go to the outliner, which is this little menu on the right, is that there is the rig and the model, and it's linked to a reference. So this file, this rig, is not actually, it's inside the scene, but it's actually linking to another scene, which is the Lars rig asset. And you can see that by these blue diamonds. Now I can explain this a little bit more. If I go to, if I just go open to folder, and I go up, then I have this folder here, which is called assets. And in this asset folder, you have the Lars rig, you have the Lars rig IK, and you have the Rosa rig. Now, instead of opening it, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Create a Reference. And then I go up, and I go to Assets, and I go to Rosa rig. And Rosa is a little bit too big always in the beginning. Oh, let's just switch that. And now Rosa is referenced into this scene. So whenever I change something to this model, I'm not going to change it, or to this rig, I'm not going to change it in this particular scene, but I'm going to change it in the reference scene, or in the final rig scene of Rosa. So let's open up that. So for example, if I want her, whenever I want her to be referenced in a new scene, I want her eyes to already be open. Let's say this is a change that we want. Then I do it in the reference, or in the final rig scene. We save it. And then we go back to the template file. And then we go to create reference. And if we create the reference rig of Rosa, she will have her eyes open. Now this way, if I animate her already, like for example, I've animated her in a jumping, and I want to change her the color of her eyes, or I want to change the color of her tongue, or the color of her body, I will not change it in this scene, but I will change it in the rig scene. So again, assets and scenes, characters are consisting of models and rigs, and objects the same. If you're finished with your final rig, your asset is final, then you reference it into the animation scene, so that whenever you want to change something to it, you will be able to do that, and it will be consistent with all the other animation scenes that you've created. And then when you finish with your animation, you can render it in your rendering. So that was a little bit of a longer tutorial than normal, but it's really important to understand this principle, and it will definitely save you a lot of time. It's maybe a little bit complicated at first, but the sooner you start working within this workflow, the cleaner your projects will stay, and the easier it will also, like for example, if you leave a project for let's say a year or so and you have to get back to it, you know exactly where everything is, and it will be easier to pick it up. Also, for example, if you're working with multiple people or more people on the same project and everybody keeps to this workflow, everybody always knows where everything is, and the collaboration is a lot easier. So I hope that this was helpful, and the next step will be starting with the modeling of our character Ben. So I'm really looking forward to start that, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.